Back with us on the SportsMax Zone. After several months of negotiations between football stakeholders and the government, the inaugural season of the Jamaica Premier League is set to kick off on June 26 and the climax 3 months later on September 26. Now, league administrators, Professional Football Jamaica Limited, PFJL, say the season will consist of 66 matches to be played across 2 venues without spectators. Joining us to talk about the competition is General Secretary of the PFJL, Arlene Martin. Arlene, welcome to the SportsMax Zone.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right. So yes, I guess I must say that we have liftoff.
We do, and we're very pleased with that. There are a number of people who are pleased, and we could tell from the turnout on the press conference today.
Yeah, in terms of, I want to start with the venues first of all. Sure. I was on the call, but I had to leave for a staff meeting. I heard when it was said that there were 2 venues, but I heard 2 other venues. What's the arrangement across the 4?
So we have 2 venues that were in advance of the approval, and as a condition of the approval, were inspected by the Ministry of Health. And those 2 venues were the National Stadium in Kingston and Sabina Park also in Kingston. So ahead of approval, those 2 venues were inspected by the Ministry of Health, and they are listed in our approval. We do understand that things may happen and we may need alternate venues. So throughout all of our planning, we have had optional or alternate venues in the case that something may happen. And those alternates would be Stadium East and the UEJFF Captain Horace Burrell Center. That center was inspected in another iteration of the process of seeking approval, and we would have to, under this open model, have the inspection of the Stadium East for approval, and then they would have to look at granting an approval for the UEJFF Captain Horace Burrell Center.
Is the sorry, Arlene, is the UE facility AstroTurf or grass like the rest of them?
Astro.
Oh, so okay, so the teams would have consented that if needs be, they wouldn't have a problem playing on AstroTurf.
Right, and that was in discussions that had begun in March when we were looking at a particular closed option, a closed environment option. We had reviewed that. I think now that we're looking at this open model where we're looking at competition at these venues, we would probably like to limit at those. However, we do have to wait to see if, because of availability, I'm not sure if we're going to have any date changes because of COVID restrictions or anything. We do acknowledge that we may need options or alternates, and so we would have to be open. May not be the ideal for some areas, however, it works well for a couple of other areas.
Right. So we have a competition stretched over 3 months and a format to boot. Take my viewers through the format that has been chosen.
Okay, and I noticed you had a nice visual for it as well.
Yes.
So the format, the considerations for the format were a few of them. As you know, it was not only when to start. The start, we would definitely want to consider that the players have enough time, and some persons will say, well, it is tight right now. We also have to consider when we're going to end. We have to bear in mind that we now have to again work with the GFF for the transfer window on the start of the next season, as well as do we want to have midweek games. So, after all of those considerations, as well as a number of matches that we would like to have, based on what we went to market with around, we came up with this. And so, unlike the regular rounds where we would have the regular seasons where you'd have 3 regular rounds, we've had an option very early of 2 rounds. But based on where we are right now, we're just looking at 1 preliminary round of 66 matches. And in that preliminary round, each team, 12 teams, would have the opportunity to play all the other teams once in that round. So that gives us the first 66 matches over approximately 11 weeks. So that takes us all the way through the summer, really, when we have the preliminary round. At the end of that round, of course, you'd have the separation of the top 6 teams and the bottom 6. What we're going to be doing with the bottom 6, and this gives them the opportunity for more matches because we don't have 2 or 3 rounds. They're going to play each other in, well, you're describing it as a round robin format, and this will help us to determine rank. Then you'll have the top 6, and from the top 6, the top 2 have a bye. That's a new term that I'm learning in football. For the top, and then what would happen is the teams that from that top 6 that are ranked 3 to 6, they would play each other. Then that would lead to, so that is the structure for selection for the semi-final in terms of what would be a quarterfinal round. So that's how it is for the that process. Then we move to the semis, where you'd have the interaction of the tops from 3 to 6 playing team number 1, team number 2, and then of course we have the final. What we would have on the day that we have the final, so we have that date when we end the season on September 26th, we would have the third place match on the same day that we have the final. So a nice, I suppose, it's consistent. You'll have football every week is what we have presented, is the package that we've worked with the Jamaica Football Federation to develop. So just should be exciting football for Jamaica.
Definitely. Arlene, walk me through the testing and of course the COVID-19 protocols that, you all will be implementing.
Okay, so in terms of the protocol, and I'll start there, we had to have the protocol approved in order to have the league approved. The protocol that was developed, and this was in consultation, it had to be reviewed by the Ministry of Health, etc., is the protocol that we have developed. We have it split in 3 parts for ease of understanding. There is the protocol for anything that has to do with interactions. So it covers training and matches. So once we have any kind of play of football, we have protocol that covers that. It covers everything that would happen on game day, from pre-game all the way through to when the game ends. So consider it from transportation to the venue, arrival at the venue, going to your locker rooms, whatever happens there, showering, changing, walking out to the field of play. We had to measure the tunnel to see if we're going to prescribe that they walk in single file or not. So it really had to be very specific, and we had to walk through the venue with the persons approving the protocol just to prove that it was feasible. So those protocol cover everything related to that, to the play of football in terms of what happens on the field, what happens along the side, benches, seating, in terms of the spacing on the seating for teams, that is how to manage hydration, all the way through to the press conference. So I just walked you through in terms of the kind of detail that we have in the protocol when you think of match day. And it is not only for the players and the technical persons, but it would naturally cover what happens with media.
Yeah.
As well. And related to that, because I said that the first section covers the play of football, it is what happens in competition, but also what happens in training. And so that training protocol is what guides now the approval for the training venues that's taking place. So the protocol exists, and now it's the training venues that, well, most of them have been approved. The other part of the 3-part protocol is the section that has to do with everything that the clubs have to do in terms of their management process. And then the 3rd part is about player lifestyle. Because this is open and the players are going to go to training, go home, go to competition, go home, then we had to develop something for guidelines for how it is that they should live. And then naturally the protocol covers some general things, observing for how it is that you feel, going in for inspection, what happens if you get sick, just a number of things, record keeping. And what we will do for testing is at the start of the league season, before there is a play, then everyone would have to be tested. And what we have in the approved protocol is that the players would be tested in advance of matches. So that is a lot of testing that will be happening. But we did that in order to be able to assure not just the government, but the players, that when you go on the field, all the people you've been interacting, that you're going to be interacting with, would have had a test, and we would know what the results of those tests would be, so that we're reducing the risk of any kind of spread that could happen.
Right, and of course, June 26th, very close. Any loose ends that you may need to tie in?
Any loose ends? You mean how many?
Yeah.
So a number of things are related to the match schedule. And now we have the match schedule. There are some things that can be completed, matching the venues to the particular dates or broadcast schedule. Who will air what match when, because persons would now have had their summer schedules for broadcast, and so we have to have that discussion. So the finalizing of things with our testing partner, the protocol and the process is finalized, which is very good. And just tying up things with how everything is going to be executed. So there are a number of things. We're going to be announcing a couple of new sponsors next week. Some of those are in the area of health and insurance, which is very good. So there are some added services for our players that I think everybody's going to be happy to hear about those partnerships when we announce those next week. And for their development, especially based on not being in play for over a year and moving into this league season, there's some things that will be done with the players as well. And things like in a couple of hours having COVID-19 protocol training with the Ministry of Health. There are, as you say, a lot of loose ends. The training that we start today is just the start of it, but quite a number of things to be done for a successful league season.
Yeah, I know, Arlene, that everyone as stakeholders would be happy that the football is going to be on, so there won't be many complaints. But I note that in the semi-final staging of the competition, when the top two are decided, these two teams would have to sit and await a round robin between teams 3, 4, 5, and 6 to know who the semi-final opponents will be. Wouldn't that be a bit of a wait for those top two teams with early qualification and probably losing their momentum from weeks of competition?
Interestingly, I think that an expert in football is probably the best person to answer on that one. Maybe for them, it would be an advantage from a rest perspective, maybe to observe the teams that are playing. So even though they don't have competition, maybe they'll train to strategically play with them. I'm sure there are advantages to it. It seems, I suppose it's not typical.
Yeah.
And forgive me, I think...
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. Don't worry.
I'm new to football. So this is my guess.
Yeah.
This is my,
Yeah.
It has to be good. The JFF technical, their competition developed it. It's a good strategy.
Yeah. So for a June 26th start, I know teams have been behind time with their training and preparation and so on, but I would think that the response coming from all of the teams involved, all 12 of them, would be huge excitement and great anticipation for the start.
I would say that, and now that we have the go, now that we have the schedule, there is probably also maybe a little bit of anxiety in terms of there's so much, or things such as I haven't played, now I'm going back to play. So I think that as much as there might be some excitement, there could also be some concern. And, it's interesting because today the Minister of Sport, Minister Grain, shared that there are some new programs that they're working on, and we'll probably have to look at some of these things. So we were looking at the physical health of the players and getting them ready. We've looked at things like insurance, and as I mentioned, we'll talk about that. But, just their readiness to come back out are some things that we will have to look at. But hopefully they're all excited and there's little anxiety. And even if there's some of that, hopefully we can work through that and replace that with just the excitement of moving ahead and having a successful league season and then bridging and just continuing to next year. Next league season.
Two quick things in the short time we have left, Arlene. One, the fixture schedule, has that been sent to the teams just yet? When are you going to publish that? And the next thing, the broadcast times, because already people have been asking me when are the matches going to be aired?
Okay, so with respect to the broadcast times, we still have to work through that. That process would have just begun now that we have the match schedule. We will come back to our audience, to all our stakeholders, and share how it's going to be broadcast, television, radio, digital, what they'll see in terms of what we work on with our print partners. So we are going to come back to fans, the public partners, to share the full broadcast plan. And then, of course, we're engaging the teams now in the full preparation. There is the training schedule, there's a testing schedule, and a number of other things that the teams now have to do once they have the match schedule.
All right, I did say two last ones, but let me throw this one in. The CONCACAF Gold Cup, of course, will be played, and this, of course, these are unique circumstances. Ordinarily, the local league would have been suspended, and we could all sit and watch that tournament. But you're going to have to be going while that Gold Cup is going on in North America.
Yes, and the JFF president commented on that today, as well as the chair for the competitions committee, Mr. Gregory Daly. And so they had to work out in developing this fixture as well as the match schedule, how it is that things would be aligned and integrated. And so they have addressed that. They've taken care of that, not only for the duration of the league season, but how things will transition moving forward. So I think we're aligned. I think we're covered, even though you do have that competition at the same time.
Yeah, so the people who are bawling me down for the fixtures, I haven't gotten them yet because they haven't been printed just yet. All right, so you heard Arlene say, just be patient, it will be coming soon.
So,
thank you for.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, they'll be coming soon. All right, thank you for your time, and we look forward to learning more about this Jamaica Premier League, and we can't wait for the first whistle to be blown so that Lance can begin commentating. Good.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Great. Lance and Donald Oliver. Because, Donald prefers schoolboy football, but he's been starved of football to the extent he'll commentate on anything these days. I'm sure he is working on his expressions and his exclamations.
Chomping at the bit.
Yes.
He's been using them in the raps that he does for us.
Oh, yes?
Yeah, he's been using the phrases and the tone and everything.
Yeah, people bastardize phrases. There was a guy I worked with, as Lance said, chomping at the bit. He wrote a story once that said the team is chomping at the bits. So I was like, what the devil is that?
Some people actually say champing at the bit.
Chomping at the bit, yeah, there you go. Anyway, we take a break. We're chomping at the bit to continue.